What exactly is style? Today I'm going to be talking about that by analyzing Humberto Ramos's artwork. Hi, my name is Luis Escobar. I'm a storyboard artist on the Simpsons television show. I've been working on the show for over 20 years now. I've been asked by KJ Green, one of my patrons on Patreon, this question. I've described myself as a decent artist. I've been grinding for a few years and would say that I developed a strong sense of form and anatomy from Loomis, Bridgman, Hampton, and Proko. Now I'm getting into stylization. I've been practicing my abilities to see how artists shift reality to create their style. My favorite comic book artists still stump me. My favorite comic book artist still stumps me, Humberto Ramos. He exaggerates every expression of movement so forcefully, but his faces and bodies never seem distorted. They instead are always aesthetically pleasing. Because I have studied the fundamentals for so long, every time I break the rules to stylize and exaggerate, my figures and faces, especially ones with strong expressions, look very boring or ugly. They come out as a series of forms that seem overly constructed and devoid of passion and freedom. Could you perhaps do a breakdown of Humberto Ramos' style and his ability to keep wild expressions pleasing through his simplification of facial features and body parts, even as he breaks every rule in the book? Thank you so much and have a good one. All right, so KJ, first of all, let me congratulate you on doing what you ought to do from the beginning, which is study from really, really good, fundamental, good draftsmanship. Just study good draftsmanship, and that is, you're like ahead of the curve in so many ways just by the fact that you are studying Loomis, Bridgman, Hampton, Proko. All those sources are amazing resources and great study fodder. All right, so just wanted to congratulate you on moving in the good directions, because from this point on it should be a lot easier to start doing exactly what you want to do, is just find your voice, find your style. All right, so one of the things before I even start talking about this is I just wanted to make sure that a lot of what I'm going to talk about I've covered in previous videos. Below you're going to see here, I have done a video here breaking down silhouettes from Jake Scott Campbell, Joe Mad, Adam Warren. So what I'm going to do here is going to be similar to this. I do not mind in any way going over things that I've already talked about before. Also, I did do another one when it comes to exaggerated faces and facial features. I did do another recording called How to Add Exaggeration to Naturalistic Realistic Drawings. So a lot of what I'm going to cover in this video also has overlapping ideas in that video. All right, so let's get started. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about is going to be referring to things that I have taught at my drawing website, at thedrawingwebsite.com, so you can see here below. So I'm going to be talking about a lot of these things, and the reason why is because all these things are relevant to the topic that we're talking about. The way I do it in the video, in the website, it may not seem relevant, but it is. So I'm going to show you why I wrote what I wrote and how it applies to somebody's artwork like Humberto Ramos. So Humberto Ramos's artwork looks like this. He is, a very cartoony looking artist. His stuff looks very cartoony. His shapes are very pushed, and I think this is the key. So what's the secret? What's the secret of this art style? What makes it tick? Because it is absolutely beautiful. I'm a fan of Humberto Ramos. All right, so here it is in 3 words. Style is design. A person's design sensibilities, their design choices, their combination of different shapes is what eventually becomes their style. Okay, so style is design. It's just the choices of shapes that they choose. And this happens over a long period of time. Designers in animated studios, when they are asked to come up with a style for a specific show, they come up with variations of shapes and styles and influences, and then they kind of hodgepodge it together and create an animated show or whatever it is, and that look is going to be the style of that show, and there's certain rules that go with that show. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that style is the style of the designer who created the style for the show. It is variations of style. They just mess with it and play with shapes and sensibilities and come up with a unique look. A person's personal style is an unconscious way of doing the same thing. An animator in an animated show does it consciously. A person's personal style kind of grows over time. It's unconscious most of the time. It's a subconscious thing where they see certain shapes and they make certain shape choices. And that's what causes a style to come into being. But in the end, it's actually the design choices within the shapes that they come up with that create that that specific style, that specific look to a person's individual art. And it just comes from them. It's just their personality in graphic form. Okay? But it is their likes and dislikes of shapes. So what is the heart of Humberto Ramos's style? What is the heart of any style? When looking at somebody's style is do you have an understanding of what design is? And so that's the number one thing. Now, that's why when you look, when you're doing naturalistic stuff like Loomis, like Bridgman and Hampton and Proko, what they're teaching you is the fundamentals. What they're teaching you is observation. They're teaching you structure, gesture, that sort of thing, that anatomy. That's what they're teaching you. That's what you ought to get out of it. But what they're not teaching you is design, because design has something a little, unless you're learning the Riley method, which is very design heavy, they usually leave design as an extra. The rules of design, when you say that even as he breaks every rule in the book, what he's doing is not breaking any rules. What he's doing is applying different rules. He's assigning design rules on top of structure, anatomy, construction, and rhythm. So design is number one. Knowing design is number one. Number two is gesture. When you say that, oh, his stuff is really dynamic and all that stuff, it's because he's got a lot of gesture in his drawings. And I'm going to talk about all this a little bit more in depth after I'm done with this list. And third, the reason why your stuff, as you say, they look boring, they come as a series of forms that seem overly constructed and devoid of passion and freedom. A lot of it is because it's lacking both the core gesture and rhythm. Rhythm is how you break up construction so that everything flows from one thing to another and makes it feel organic. So I'm going to talk about all these things. First, design. Now, design is something that I wrote about in my drawing website, beginning with this chapter called Stick Figures with Style, Basic Design. I break up design principles as being non-ideal. So what I tend to say is that when you're working with design, what you want to do is harmonize, contrast, and balance. Okay, so balance is what we're usually taught when we're looking at something ideal. We're breaking all the body parts into these perfect proportions that are this halfway point, and then between this halfway point and this halfway point, everything is like perfect, and then this is this much size, and it has to be like, so if you break this in half and this in half and this in half, and then you break this in half, and this part is half the size of this part, and that sort of thing. That's an idealized balance kind of look to the world. That was that was an idealized notion from the Renaissance. But when it comes to design, it becomes dull. Like there is beauty in balance. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes it becomes very dull and uninteresting to have everything be just straight. So what you want is contrast. But the problem with contrast is that contrast gets ugly. Like if you overdo it, you end up with, as you say, boring or you either, if your stuff is too boring, it's because it's too balanced, and if it's too ugly, it's because it's too contrasty. So harmonizing it, finding the right balance of balance and contrast, is that harmony is where you get the appeal. That's where Humberto Ramos' stuff is. It's like right at the edge of, like right at the balance, and the only way to get that is to mess around with shapes. He's done it over years and years, just drawing and then just kind of discovering little by little. Professional designers, they do that in a micro environment where they're forced to have to do that. So again, so like in my book that I also give away for free, but this is on the website for free too. I say, see, here's the balance. So what you want to do is you want to see, because everything is all perfectly balanced, and or here, and then you start, like, the way that you start messing around is you start breaking up the things. Like here's the, just start, don't stop being so balanced. Like try to find ways to mess around with the shapes, and sometimes it'll work and sometimes they won't. But this is, in a nutshell, in the most basic way possible, with using stick figures, what I'm talking about. Here's a balanced head, and then everything is perfectly triangular, like idealized, and so you start messing around, and then you start coming up with variations, and this is what design is all about. Okay, so that's, in a nutshell, what design is. But then and so here we have like a more Robert Valley kind of a thing, where everything is all broken up into different shapes and things like that. So and then on top of that, but let's not, that's just the basics. Once you get past that, you're going to want to use real shapes, and this is where the core of it is. We have here a figure, and we're just messing with the shapes again, not being idealized, just playing around with shapes, and it's just flat graphics. We're not talking about perfectly constructed stuff. We're talking about graphic shapes. And that is the key. Creating graphic shapes, but then adding solidity afterwards. So you start with a graphic shape, and then you start adding solidity afterwards once you've got that contrast and balance thing working. You add solidity, but first you want the graphics, the graphic shapes, the graphic design. You want a good, clear silhouette of shapes. So all of that, let's actually take a look at Humberto Ramos's work, and then see how that is applied to his work. Let's start with this Hulk. All right, so let's take a look at this. Humberto Ramos has amazing shapes, and this is what makes his style really work, is this. Do you see this? This is Humberto Ramos' secret. He's got some amazing looking shapes, he makes these graphic looking characters. What you're actually reacting to when you look at his work is his shapes. He adds solidity and construction and anatomy, but what you're actually reacting to is his amazing way of creating great looking shapes. So let's take a look at this. And there is a, you could break everything down into these graphics. And you can, and this is the secret to all good, appealing styles, is that at some level there is a very there's some kind of harmony between the contrasty shapes that he uses. So okay, so do you see how this is straights? There's a curve, straight, another curve here. This goes back to the lessons online that I've got. His stuff is not as streamlined as I'm making it, but take a look. Essentially, what I've just broken down is what he's got. And then he adds a little bit of extra finesse to add a little bit of the organic look that is in the human anatomy. But essentially, these are the graphic shapes that he's using, that he's playing with. Let's take a look at another one. His women, they all generally have this same look, these same kind of proportions. Again, I'm simplifying here in order to show you even more clearly what he's doing. There is more structure and detail than I'm putting in here, but it could be it still is essentially graphic shapes. So you're remember, we as artists are working in a flat medium. What we do is not three-dimensional, it is two-dimensional. So the trick is to create appealing flat graphic shapes that then we create solidity over. So this is what you are seeing that appeals to you when you look at an Humberto Ramos drawing. You're looking at these shapes. And this is probably going on here too, like right through here. Okay, so you're looking at the in the proportions too. So I don't know how idealized this is or how out of proportion. Let's see. So I'm going to break this down really quickly because I don't want this video to go on forever. But Okay, so let's say that this is kind of her proportions from here to here. So her top, even if her head was all the way, it was higher, this from the top to the crotch is actually longer, it's shorter than the length of her legs to the bottom. Do you see? So she's not actually split in half, perfectly proportioned. Her legs are actually longer than her body and her head. Let's say that she was standing up higher, taller, and her head would go all the way up to the top there. It would still be smaller. So we could measure from her crotch to the knees. Let's see if it, I don't know if you can see that, but they're not even. They're not even, are they? They're pretty close. Pretty close to being even. Yeah, I think they're, well, no, actually no, because if you're measuring from here to the feet, definitely not. And her feet are really big. So I'm pretty sure that these arms are pretty even. They sometimes need to be. From the top of the shoulder to the elbow, and then nope, they're not. So the principles of design, especially in Humberto Ramos's work, are there. Like none of the stuff is idealized, and the shapes are being pushed. Straight versus curve. This is much straighter here than this curves here. Let me see. Let's turn on the thing again. So there is a graphic going on here. I exaggerated the graphic because he does have a bump here, but I made it straighter than it is, and this is much. If you look at it, essentially, it feels straighter than this lumpy. So which is why I made it straight up straight. So this, you could see that this is less curvy than this. And essentially, this is what it feels like. It feels like it's a straight versus a curve. Again, this is, see, this is much straighter because the human body actually does this anyway. Straight versus a curve. And I didn't, in fact, I messed up here. This is much curvier than I drew. Whoops. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of contrast going on here in his designs. You've got straight versus curves. You've got proportions that are different proportions. You've got bigger, wider shapes versus smaller shapes. You've got tapering going on here. These are definitely very, very tapering shapes. Here's a tapering shape. Here's a tapering shape. There's two tapering shapes here in the arms. You've got tapering body parts here. You've got tapering body parts here. So there's tapering going on. There's shape contrast going on. It's all graphic. It's all, if that's why it's working. That's why Humberto Ramos's work looks so beautiful and dynamic and exciting, because of the shape contrasts and his design sense, that he's honed and adjusted over time, and even still is adjusting and fixing. And there is no absolute perfect formula for him, because you could look at all his artwork and you can see that he's kind of still fudging stuff. He doesn't always draw characters exactly perfectly the same every single time, because sometimes he feels like something should be slightly adjusted shape than others. So I like this panel here because you can see here very clearly that he's just thinking graphics here. Look at this. Look at this figure here. All of what he does can be broken down into these silhouettes that are just very clear graphics. This is why his stuff is working as well as it does. Okay, so that's what one of the essential elements of his design style that you're not seeing or getting or understanding is because you're not understanding design well enough. Okay, so there's another. So the next thing that we're going to be talking about here is gesture. Now I talk about gesture in the drawing website, and there's a reason. And in the drawing website, I call the thing the key to flow, power, and dynamism. Mastering gesture. One of the reasons why your stuff may seem stiff, maybe, let me see, what is it that you say? Wild and expressive. Ability to be wild and expressive is all about gesture. It's all about pushing the poses further than you think they ought to be. Just pushing them and pushing them, over exaggerating the poses themselves. And these are copies of Frank Frazetta gesture drawings here. He was a master of gesture. Like his stuff was so energetic, and when he drew naturalism and real anatomy on top of it, it's unbelievable. And I'm telling you that that's what you need to do. That's what Humberto Ramos is really good at, is getting that gesture down, the power. That's where gesture comes in. It's the essence, it's the core of a pose is being very gestural and really pushing the pose. So yeah, just let me show you really quick what I'm talking about here. This is what you're seeing. This is one of the reasons why he's getting so much energy. So you're getting this. Just power, power, power. Okay, so this is what you're seeing. Boom, you know, like that's what I'm talking about. That's the gesture. Just pow, you know, like you're like, just let your hand just feel it, right? And then just push it and push it. And when you do that, then when you add the structure, it's going to get stiff. The art is being able to still keep some essence of that gesture in there. And that's really difficult, but it's possible. And the best way to do that is to fudge the anatomy just enough, just so that you're still pushing that gesture. Okay? And so that's what I would say, and is part of the thing. But here's the other thing, especially when you've got this gesture going on and your stuff, and you're adding a solidity on it, and it just looks like you just put a slab of wood on top of the gesture, and it looks stiff as all get out. And that is when rhythm comes in. That's when rhythm comes in. So let me go back to the drawing website here, and where I talk about rhythm. Now rhythm is this. You've got your drawing, but what you want to do is keep the essence of the gesture. So every line, a good rule of thumb to try to get into the mindset of keeping rhythm, is that every single line that you draw is connected to some other line that you draw somewhere in the drawing. Okay, so in the end, everything is interconnected, like a weave, like you're weaving it all together, like it all should connect. So you've got, say, a drawing, you've solidified, you've done the structure, but then You want to make sure that when you clean it up, you want to keep all the things like really flowing into itself so it doesn't look all stiff. So then you clean it up and it's all connected. So you can see in Humberto Ramos's work that that's kind of what's going on here. This is connected into this, and it flows into this. So there's this gesture going on here. There's a line going through here, and it goes through here, and it goes right to the toe, right here. See it? All of these lines here, this line here is connected into here, and it goes around, and it wraps around. This line here goes in here, and it goes right into this leg. Do you see? So that's how you keep some of that energy without, so that it all starts fitting together. There's this here. See how it all comes around? This here comes around. You've got this face, but this face reinforces this. This line here comes up and it goes in here. It's all connected. Goes in here. They all point to each other. This goes in here and it comes around and it comes through here. Like, see that? That's rhythm right there. That's why you get all that energy, and he doesn't get all stiff. It doesn't look like a bunch of pieces because it all flows together like water, because we're made of water and the human body is made of water. So it all flows together in and out and weaves itself in there. And so what you want to do as an artist is control it and pull it all together and have it all go in there. Okay, so one of the questions you also asked was about expressions, and that's something that I almost forgot. Now, that video that I did before is about expressions and exaggerating expressions, and so it all still comes back to gesture. Gesture don't start with structure. Start with gesture first, and then that's where exaggeration comes in. That's when you get to push the stuff. So that's why his work looks so great, because when he does the exaggerated look, you've got something like this face. He doesn't necessarily need to start with every single little detail. What I'm pretty sure he starts with is just the gesture of it, like this, you know? So if you start with something like this, you've already kind of got what you want. You're like, you know. So and then you go in and then you start adding the structure and the anatomy and all that stuff, little by little. And it doesn't have to be clean. You got the anatomy here, these rhythms going on here. But see, again, like I'm saying, there's rhythms going in here, and they should reinforce what you're doing. So when you add the structure, it's all about reinforcing that. And by the time you're done, you've got your face. You know, these things are just coming in here, and then you're like, everything is pushing and pushing. So that's kind of what you want. You start with a gesture of the most extreme pose you want, and then slowly construct it using rhythms and in order to make sure that everything flows together. The problem is that it takes practice. And you also have to know what looks right to you, because you still, his design choices, his facial expressions, the way that he drew this face is unique to him because that's what he likes. That's what he looks right to him. Whatever looks right to you will be totally different. So you'll have to experiment with the way you draw the exaggerated expressions and what looks good for you. And that's the key. It's just practice, and it's just playing around. That's the key. Let me reiterate what I said here. First, design. Style is design. So if you want to get good as somebody like Humberto Ramos, who's kind of like who's got this really great design sense, you've got to understand the principles of design better. Okay. So you want to understand that style, it's a combination of the shapes that you enjoy seeing most. And the only way to know what you enjoy seeing most is to put down graphic shapes. I'm not talking about solid constructed shapes. I'm talking about flat graphics together, because you could add more finesse on top of flat graphic shapes. So the aesthetic of the flat graphic shape combination is what you're searching for. What is the essence of the stuff that you enjoy seeing? You enjoy seeing Humberto Ramos's aesthetic combination of shapes. That's what appeals to you. However, when you do it, you'll end up finding things that are similar to his, but you may decide that you don't like certain graphic shape combinations that he does, but that you don't like doing because you like something else. And that's where your personal style will come from, your personal choices of the graphic shapes that you put down on the paper. That's what makes your unique style, your unique voice, your unique point of view is seeing what works for others, testing them out, and then deciding whether or not you like them or not, and then jettisoning what you don't and keeping what you do. And by the time you come out the other end, you're going to have your own thing going, because you're not going to agree with all the graphic decisions someone else is doing. Okay? So the essence of style is design. So please learn design first. And then when you're constructing, make sure that if you want power in your drawings, get fantastic and great at using gesture. Okay? And then after that, when you're finally finishing up your drawing and you want to keep that gesture in the constructed solid drawing that you're trying to keep, make sure that everything is flowing into each other organically, keeping the rhythms of the drawing together so that when you finish a drawing, it all feels like a unified whole rather than a bunch of pieces that you stuck together like a Lego man. You want it to look like it all comes together and it flows into each other like water, you know? Be water, my friend. That's what I would say about Humberto Ramos's work that you're seeing, that you admire, that you want to get into your work. That's the essence of what you're looking for. That's what you want to get out of his stuff. Look beyond the superficial. See what is underneath. What makes it tick? Look at your favorite artists like Humberto, but other artists too. And look, see, what are the graphic shapes that they're using? How are they using them? And look at the artists that you don't like too. See if what's not working. Why don't you like those shapes? What is it about them that doesn't appeal to you? What is it that they're not doing? Are they not being exaggerated enough? That sort of thing. What does it look like when you take away all the detail and just leave the silhouettes? Or simplify them. Like, see if you can simplify a drawing into its essential graphics. Try to do it yourself. Okay? I hope that answers your question, KG. I'm sorry that this video is so long, but I really wanted to get to the essence of all this stuff, and I really wanted to point these things out. And it's kind of hard to just say, this is it, you know. And besides, I get really passionate about this stuff. If you found this video valuable, I would like to encourage you to return value for value by becoming one of my patrons over on Patreon. Not only will you encourage me to continue making informative videos that are useful to you, but you get extra perks too. For only a small investment of $1 a month, you can get all new videos I create months before anyone else gets to see it. Also, if you have any questions you'd like me to answer as a patron, you get priority and I answer your questions first. On top of that, when you're a patron at any level, you become part of a raffle where I send original art via mail to the winner of that month. The higher your tier, the better your opportunity to win. Higher tier patrons also get access to any art I do in high-res JPEGs and also full access to PSD files to any work I do, including the PSD files of these videos. Currently, there's a huge backlog of downloadable files you can get. So right away, you're going to get quite a lot of bang for your buck. And the more patrons I get, the better these videos will get. The more content I can produce. In other words, the more you benefit. Please consider becoming a patron. Thanks. The link to my Patreon is on the screen and in the description of this video. I hope this helps, and I will see you next time. All right, bye.